Hey everyone, Social Solipsist here for another episode of 52 and 52, and this week I am taking a look at DMC Devil May Cry, the reboot question mark of the Devil May Cry series. I don't know if they're officially going that route and they've confirmed further games or whether it's an alternate reality or whatnot, but I started playing this one. This is actually the only one in the series I've ever played. I have cursory familiarity with the series as a whole. It's not really something I ever played growing up, when the games were coming out, because, as I've mentioned before, I didn't have a childhood and didn't get to play anything, that wasn't rated E for everyone. So this is sort of my first foray into the series, my first serious foray. Again, cursory gameplay here and there, and I have some experience with other character action games, things like Bayonetta and the like. So it's not for lack of experience with the genre as a whole. The character action, hack and slash genre, whatever you want to call it, they're all sort of nebulous terms. So this game got a lot of backlash when it was initially released, mostly from fans of the series, because they disliked the way they had changed things, I suppose. I mean, I'm not an expert. I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of friends who are particular fans of the series, so I don't really have a whole lot of points of reference besides what was directly reported in the media. But even as somebody who didn't really play the original games or anything like that, there's definitely things that I inherently don't like about the game design-wise, and things where I think they were a little too happy to shit on the original series, frankly. Not the least of which is in the very opening cutscene not the opening cutscene, it is slightly after the opening cutscene in the first level, where something lands on new Dante's head, and that looks like old Dante's hair, and he says never, or something along those lines, as if making fun of old Dante, original Dante's haircut, which is really not the way to, by any means, endear your new reboot of the series to people who love the old one. But regardless of that, I also have some issues unrelated with regards to design-wise. Yes, Dante is a smug son of a bitch. Not all the time, but it comes out often enough that it's not super pleasant. He's not particularly endearing. He's just kind of a goofy douchebag a lot of the time, and it's not the most fun thing in the world. Again, not the most endearing character for you to play as or follow. But that aside, let me get into the gameplay a little bit. As far as a character action game goes, again, I don't have a huge amount of experience, but I think I have enough to say one way or another whether it handles well. And it doesn't handle terribly, but it does have some definite problems. There are some interesting choices they made with regards to the control scheme, if nothing else. It may or may not come up in the footage that I'm going to run behind this audio here. I have some serious issues trying to get the air dash out, because no matter how you reconfigure the controls, and I've reconfigured it several times to my liking, because I am kind of picky about that kind of thing, the air dash is incredibly finicky. If you don't hit those buttons perfectly, it just won't happen, and you will end up throwing yourself down a pit over and over and over again. I failed the tutorial for the air dash because I literally could not make it happen, and it wasn't for lack of knowing how to do it. It straight up just does not work a significant amount of the time. So that has been sort of nagging at me. I've put about 3-4 hours into the game at this point, which I think is enough time to get a good sense of the controls otherwise as well. And generally speaking, it doesn't feel bad. It's not the best feeling character action game I've ever felt. Honestly, Bayonetta is seriously, it's after Bayonetta, every character action that comes out has a hard time doing character action as well as Bayonetta did. I have yet to play Bayonetta 2. That's something I'd like to play at some point, but it hasn't yet happened. Let's see. But having the heavy weapon, the axe, and the sort of light weapon, the scythe, that sort of represent the two sides of Dante's parentage and that sort of thing. They combo well. They're altogether not bad. I have a good time swinging them around. I do have a few qualms about how the sound effect and that comes out. I do think they feel right as far as visuals. And again, I'm going to talk about weapon feel, which I do bring up quite a bit, but it is something I think is very important. Visually, they flash in just the right ways to make it feel significant. But at the end of the day, often the damage, they look more epic than the damage actually comes out as. And as I was saying, the sound effects that go alongside do not always seem to match. There's a bit of dissonance as far as what's what. As I'm only a little ways into the game, this may come up more or less. They may drop it. But I did start running into some enemies, again, that may be shown here, may not, that are only injured by a particular one of the weapons. There is no tutorial for that. It just kind of throws them at you, and you're supposed to see, oh, it bounces off. Deal with it a different way. But limiting enemies to only being damaged by a single weapon, it's not inherently bad in theory, but in execution, having to chip away very slowly at a character with a very limited moveset. I mean, it undoes the whole point of multi-weapon character action, of being able to flourish between various weapons to do what you got to do, use the timings and the weight and the strength and the knockups and all that. When you only have one weapon, it's a pretty goofy thing to do design-wise. Likewise, I did run into one type of enemy thus far that I really do not enjoy fighting, which is the chainsaw types. Again, may or may not be seen in the footage. That are very unpleasant to fight because you basically, at least I haven't found a way to really consistently stun them. Basically, they do one of two charging attacks fairly frequently. And if you only have one, you can kind of handle it without too much difficulty, but they will often send two of them at a time. And then when they cannot be injured or interrupted, with any sort of consistency, having two of them come at you at once and do a significant chunk of damage to your health, they're just not fun to fight. At the end of the day, that's a big thing for me. Is it any fun to fight? If one of the enemies feels like a chore and the rest do not, then I'm all for difficulty, but don't make difficulty at the expense of the fun, if that makes any sort of sense. Let's see. I'm getting kind of on a tangent. Overall, the moveset is pretty solid. The unlockables to adjust how, like, the abilities that you have, the damage behind your swings, additional things. Of course, the first thing you unlock, because it is a DMC game, you gotta unlock the stinger, because otherwise you're stupid. and generally the rate at which you unlock things feels good, and is it scales well with the increasing difficulty over time. Like I said, do have a few qualms with the way the controls handle a little bit for a few of the items, not the least of which is the air dash, but that's not the biggest thing in the world. Although, again, when you compare it to something like Bayonetta or even some of the earlier DMC games that I only had a cursory play of, it just doesn't handle as well. So overall, character action wise, it's doing all right, but it's not the best. As far as design wise, like visuals, I gotta say it's sort of a mixed bag. I don't hate what they've done with the art style. I think I don't think that the reboot of the visuals is inherently bad. Again, I don't like smug Dante, but what can you do? The world that the version of Limbo that they have and the version of the normal world that Dante lives in are both design-wise quite good. The problem comes mostly in the post-processing, where the normal world is very drab and gray and brown, which goes back to mid-2000s problems with shooters and dungeon crawlers of just being drab, gray, and brown and not much fun to look at, and really doing a disservice to the architectural design and things like that, although of course it's not the focus in a character action game when you're moving quickly through the world. But it is good enough that it is a little disappointing to see that. Likewise, it has the opposite problem when you get dragged into Limbo, where it suddenly becomes hypersaturated and flooded with these reds and oranges, and then kind of blues on the other side. And it's more of a filter really than anything else on the visuals, and it has a tendency to really muddle everything you're looking at, rather than just detract from the appearance as in the normal world. The visual filter, which as far as I can tell you cannot turn off in any way, shape, or form, which is sort of orange on the bottom and blue on the top, really serves to muddle a lot of what you're looking at. Again, doing it a disservice, but in a different way. I didn't even thought to look into it, but maybe somewhere out there, I'll have to look right after this. Maybe somewhere out there's a mod to, somebody's made a mod, since it is a PC game, to fix that visual adjustment. But it is just, it does a disservice to the world and a disservice to the clarity of the visuals. And since combat has a few issues, clarity in the visuals would be appreciated. There are a few little nitpicks I could have regarding tutorialization of various things, either making certain things very obtuse, or things that should have tutorials and just straight up don't, or waypoints, pointers, things like that. Little minor niggles here and there, but they're so minor that, to be perfectly honest, none of them pop directly into my head right now. Storyline wise, I don't know what the original DMC was like. Storyline wise, I mean, I've been around the internet long enough to become familiar with a little bit of the original game, the original series' quality of writing and plot line and characters and stuff like that, and voice acting more than anything else. If you don't know the particular delivered line that I am referring to, I'd be surprised if you're any sort of DMC fan.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
But it's all sort of middling again in this game. The writing is nothing spectacular. A lot of really heavy exposition to deliver world building, which is something I disagree with, but to be perfectly frank, I don't blame them. It's the simplest way to get people into the gameplay quickly. I said get people into the gameplay quickly, but this game does have some issues with dragging out long cutscenes that don't really seem totally appropriate and break things up a little bit too much. But that's another thing. Writing wise, again, it's middling. The dialogue that's written is not too terrible. I don't like Dante, but so be it. The other characters are really just, they're nothing thus far. There's not enough there. And there may never be enough there for me to really make a call. And the voice acting is nothing to write home about one way or another. It's not too bad, but nothing special. Probably having some to do with the middling quality of the writing. But yeah. All in all, I'm going to keep playing it. I do wish there were more games in this genre, this character action genre, especially on PC, where there's a very short list, like counted on one hand, releases in the last couple of years for the most part. But you take what you can get. Maybe one day in the future we'll see a resurgence. Although, now come to think of it, I guess Darksiders does sort of fall into that category, but I think I've made my feelings clear on that series. Although maybe I'll put some time into Darksiders 2 and see how it goes. Anyway, I digress. I think that's all I have really to say about it at this point. I've gotten far enough that I've realized I don't hate it, and I'm going to give it some more time. But no promises as to finishing it. My understanding is that it's not incredibly long, so I don't feel like it should be too painful, even if I decide I genuinely don't like it one way or another. Anyway, that was a little rambly and so on and so forth. But there's an episode. Enjoy it. Thank you guys for watching. I have been the Social Solipsist. This was 52 and 52, and I will see you guys next time.